An Orthodox Christian Critique of Metatron. 1. Introduction, the figure of Metatron. Metatron is a figure found in post-biblical Jewish mysticism, particularly in Merkabah and Kabbalistic literature. He is often described as the highest of angels, sometimes even called the Prince of the Presence or the Lesser Yhwh. In some texts, Metatron is identified with Enoch, the patriarch who walked with God and was taken up into heaven, Genesis 5 verse 24, and who, according to apocryphal Jewish writings, was transformed into an angelic being. From an Orthodox Christian standpoint, this figure raises profound theological problems concerning angelology, Christology, and the nature of divine mediation. 2. The uniqueness of Christ as the mediator. The Orthodox Church confesses that Jesus Christ alone is the perfect and unique mediator between God and man, 1 Timothy 2 verse 5. In the Incarnation, the eternal Logos, through whom all things were made, John 1 verse 3, takes on human nature without confusion, division, or change. In this act, he unites divinity and humanity in his one divine person. By contrast, the idea of Metatron as a lesser Yhwh or divine intermediary obscures the uniqueness of the incarnate Logos. It introduces a second, semi-divine figure who functions as God's vice-regent, which in Orthodox theology is unacceptable. There is no ontological space for a being who is almost God or who bears divine names and honors but is not consubstantial with the Father. Such a conception implicitly divides the divine unity and dilutes the radical claim of the gospel that God himself has entered into creation. 3. Angelic hierarchy and the created order. Orthodox theology, following the tradition of St. Dionysius the Areopagite and later fathers such as St. John of Damascus, affirms a highly structured hierarchy of angelic beings. These angels are entirely created, spiritual intelligences who serve God and mediate his will, but they never share in his divine essence. Even the highest orders, the Seraphim and Cherubim, remain infinitely distant from God in being, and their holiness is purely derivative. Metatron, however, is sometimes portrayed as sharing in the divine nature, sitting on God's throne, or receiving worship. These claims are irreconcilable with Orthodox angelology. To ascribe divine attributes to any creature, no matter how exalted, is to fall into blasphemy or subtle idolatry, for it confuses the uncreated with the created. 4. The deification of man in Orthodox perspective. Some defenders of the Metatron tradition appeal to the idea that Enoch's transformation into Metatron parallels the Christian concept of theosis, human participation in the divine life. But this is a misunderstanding of the Orthodox doctrine. In Orthodoxy, theosis does not mean that a human being becomes a secondary deity or a divine hypostasis. Rather, by grace and participation, the saints share in the uncreated energies of God, not in his essence. They are deified by union with Christ, not by being enthroned as separate divine intermediaries. The transformation of Enoch in Orthodox tradition is a sign of holiness and immortality, not an apotheosis into a godlike being. Thus, the transformation of Enoch into Metatron as a near-divine being distorts the Orthodox doctrine of deification, substituting a mythic exaltation for true communion in divine grace. 5. Christological fulfillment and the angel of the Lord. Orthodox theology recognizes that the Old Testament appearances of the angel of the Lord, for example, Genesis 18, Exodus 3, are Christophanies, manifestations of the pre-incarnate Logos. These theophanies prefigure the Incarnation. Later Jewish mysticism, lacking this Christological key, interpreted these appearances as the acts of a superangelic being like Metatron. From the Orthodox standpoint, this is a tragic misreading. Where Jewish mysticism saw a mighty angel, the Church sees the eternal Word. Thus, Metatron can be seen as a post-Christian distortion of an authentic theological intuition, the recognition that God himself personally manifests and mediates his presence, but one that, without Christ, falls into confusion between creator and creature. 6. Conclusion. In summary, Metatron, as a concept, contradicts Orthodox Christology, for there can be no intermediary between God and creation except the incarnate Word himself. It violates Orthodox angelology by ascribing divine status to a created being. It distorts the true meaning of theosis, replacing participation in divine grace with exaltation to divine identity. And it misinterprets Old Testament revelation, which, from the Orthodox view, points not to Metatron but to the pre-incarnate Christ. In short, the Orthodox Christian must regard the Metatron tradition as a heterodox mythological development, perhaps preserving fragments of ancient revelation but fundamentally lacking the fullness of truth revealed in Christ, the true light which enlightens every man coming into the world. John 1 verse 9.